Okay, so let me begin with something that has been sitting uncomfortably at the center of American foreign policy for the past 72 hours. And I want you to understand something fundamental about what is actually happening in the Middle East right now. The Trump administration is conducting military strikes on Iranian forces in the Strait of Hormuz. Israel is simultaneously escalating operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And all of this is occurring theoretically under the framework of an ongoing ceasefire negotiation. This is not a contradiction. This is a strategy. And the strategy is failing in real time. I am Professor Jiang, and this channel exists to decode power shifts before the headlines catch up. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay locked in, because what we are about to discuss reveals something about American statecraft that Washington does not want you to see. Let me start with the basic facts. On May 27th, United States Central Command confirmed that American forces conducted strikes in southern Iran near Bandar Abbas. The Pentagon framed these strikes as defensive, targeting missile launch sites and Iranian vessels allegedly attempting to lay mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Two senior U.S. officials told Fox News these strikes do not indicate the ceasefire is over. Think about that language. Do not indicate. Not the ceasefire continues, not we are honoring our commitments. Do not indicate. That is the language of technical ambiguity. That is the language of plausible deniability. Now let me address something directly. People have very interesting definitions of what a ceasefire actually means. If two parties have agreed to stop shooting and then one party resumes shooting, there are only two possible explanations. Either the ceasefire never existed in the first place, or it has now ended. There is no third option. There is no semantic escape hatch. And yet here we are, with American officials insisting both things are true simultaneously. Okay, let me shift now to what happened immediately after these strikes. Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israel would intensify military operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is not a minor escalation. This is a public declaration made with the backing of the Trump administration that Israel intends to expand the scope and intensity of its military campaign. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, standing in India, endorsed these strikes. A senior U.S. official released a statement saying the Trump administration would support further Israeli escalation in retaliation for Hezbollah violations of the ceasefire. Let that settle for a moment. The United States is simultaneously negotiating a ceasefire with Iran while giving Israel the explicit green light to escalate against Iran's closest regional ally. This is not diplomacy. This is a confidence game, and the confidence is evaporating. Let me take you back to something that matters historically. When the Kennedy administration faced the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962, the core principle of the negotiating strategy was what we now call signaling. Every military movement, every public statement, every private communication was designed to send a specific message to the Soviet leadership about American resolve, American capability, and American willingness to follow through. But, and this is crucial, Kennedy maintained absolute consistency between the public posture and the private negotiating position. When he said the missiles had to go, he meant it. When he said America would not invade Cuba, he meant that too. The Soviets could trust the signal because the signal was coherent. What Trump is doing now is the opposite. He is sending contradictory signals. To Iran, he says, we are willing to negotiate. We have made concessions on the nuclear enrichment issue. We are close to a deal. Simultaneously to Israel, he says, escalate. We have your back. There are no red lines. These two messages are incompatible. Iran cannot negotiate seriously with a party that is simultaneously arming and encouraging its enemies. This is not strategy. This is chaos dressed in the language of deal-making. Okay, now I want to talk about the specific concession Trump made on the nuclear issue because it reveals something important about the entire negotiating structure. For months, Trump insisted that all enriched uranium, material enriched to 60% purity, must be physically transferred to the United States. This was his opening position. Iran rejected it. Iran said, we will downblend this material under IAEA supervision, or we will transfer it to Russia or China for safekeeping under international inspection. This has been Iran's consistent position since the JCPOA era. Suddenly, on May 27th, Trump announced he would accept Iran's position. The enriched uranium can be downblended in place or transferred to a third country or destroyed on Iranian territory, all under IAEA verification. This is a massive concession. Trump has essentially capitulated to Iran's long-standing demand. So why would he do this? Why would he give away leverage right now in the middle of negotiations when the other side is still offering resistance? The answer is in what Trump said next. He announced that as a condition of any Iran deal, all Gulf states must join the Abraham Accords. Not some, all. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Oman, Kuwait, every significant regional actor must normalize relations with Israel as a precondition for ending the war with Iran. Let me be transparent with you about what this means. Trump is not trying to negotiate a bilateral ceasefire between Iran and America. He is trying to construct a regional realignment. He is trying to use the Iran war as leverage to force the entire Gulf into a new security architecture centered on Israeli hegemony. And he is doing this because if he simply negotiates an Iran deal without this broader realignment, he loses. Politically, he loses. The international community will say Trump went to war with Iran and came away with less than the JCPOA offered. Trump got humiliated. So he needs something bigger. He needs a grand bargain. He needs to be able to announce that he has not only ended the Iran war, but has also fundamentally restructured Middle Eastern geopolitics in America's favor. That is the only narrative that allows him to claim victory. But here's the problem, and this is where it gets very interesting. When Trump made this demand on the phone call with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Pakistan, the response was silence. One of the U.S. officials on the call said there was silence on the line, and Trump joked and asked if they are still there. Think about what that silence means. These are not weak leaders. These are not uncertain actors. These are the most powerful figures in the Gulf region, and they went silent. Why? Because Trump was asking them to do something politically impossible. He was asking Saudi Arabia to normalize with Israel while the Palestinian question remains unresolved. He was asking Qatar to do the same. He was asking Pakistan, a country with 230 million Muslims, where the Palestine issue is deeply woven into popular consciousness, to normalize with Israel and abandon the Palestinian cause. This is not a minor political ask. This is asking these leaders to betray their own populations, and they know it. Their populations know it. The Muslim world knows it. And yet Trump is making this a condition of the ceasefire. Okay, let me address the deeper strategic problem here. There is a concept in game theory called the commitment problem. It describes a situation where two parties want to reach an agreement, but neither party trusts the other to honor the agreement once it is signed. The solution to a commitment problem is usually face-to-face negotiation, where leaders can look each other in the eye, establish personal rapport, and create what game theorists call costly signaling, concrete actions that prove commitment. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who served as Chief of Staff to Colin Powell, made this point in an interview yesterday. He said, "The heart of diplomacy is meeting face-to-face and working things out." And he is correct. But here is the fact that nobody wants to acknowledge. Since the initial talks in Pakistan, there have been 0 face-to-face meetings between American officials and Iranian officials. 0, not one. How are you supposed to resolve a commitment problem without the one tool that actually solves commitment problems? You cannot. It is impossible. And Trump knows this. which means Trump is not actually trying to solve the commitment problem. He is trying to avoid admitting that America has lost. Let me explain what I mean by that. If Trump simply negotiates an Iran ceasefire without the Abraham Accords precondition, here is what happens. Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices stabilize, the regional war ends, and the international community says, Trump went to war with Iran, spent hundreds of billions of dollars, destabilized the entire Middle East, killed thousands of people, and ended up accepting the same terms Iran was offering before the war started. Trump lost. That is politically unacceptable to him. So instead, he is trying to layer on this additional demand, the Abraham Accords, so that he can claim he has achieved something bigger than just ending the war. He has restructured the entire region. He has isolated Iran. He has created a new alliance architecture. But this demand is so politically toxic that the Gulf states are refusing to even engage with it seriously, which means the ceasefire will not happen, which means the war will continue, which means oil prices will remain elevated, which means the global economy will continue to contract, and which means Trump will have to eventually admit defeat anyway, just with more death and more damage. Now, I want to be clear. I am not saying Trump is stupid or incompetent. I am saying Trump is caught in a structural trap. He made a strategic commitment to war with Iran. That war is not going well. The only exit that preserves his political narrative is a comprehensive regional realignment. But that realignment is politically impossible because it requires the Arab world to abandon Palestine. And you cannot force the Arab world to abandon Palestine because Palestine is not a negotiable issue for Arab populations. This is what strategists call imperial overreach. It is the moment when a declining hegemon tries to extract more from the international system than the system is willing to give. Rome tried it in the 3rd century. Britain tried it in the 1920s and 1930s. America is trying it now. Okay, so what comes next? Let me offer you a scenario. Iran will continue to signal willingness to negotiate. The U.S. will continue to conduct strikes. Israel will continue to escalate in Lebanon and Gaza. The Gulf states will continue to refuse the Abraham Accords demand. And eventually, one of two things will happen. Either Trump will back down on the Abraham Accords requirement and accept a simple ceasefire, which he will frame as a victory, but which everyone will recognize as a defeat, or the war will expand into a full regional conflict, possibly involving direct Iranian strikes on American assets or Israeli territory. There is a third possibility, which some analysts have suggested. Iran could sign a ceasefire agreement while simultaneously escalating strikes against the UAE, which is Israel's closest ally in the Gulf. Every time Israel escalates in Lebanon, Iran escalates in the UAE. This creates a kind of proxy equilibrium where the ceasefire technically exists, but the violence never stops. This would be humiliating for Trump because it would demonstrate that American power cannot actually enforce a ceasefire in the region. But all three scenarios lead to the same conclusion. Trump's current strategy is not sustainable. The demand for the Abraham Accords is not negotiable. The commitment problem cannot be solved without face-to-face diplomacy. And face-to-face diplomacy cannot happen while both sides are conducting military strikes. Let me bring this back to something fundamental about how power actually works in the international system. Power is not just military capability. Power is also the ability to shape the narrative about what happened. For the past 6 months, Trump has been trying to shape the narrative that America is winning in Iran. But the facts are becoming harder to ignore. The Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, oil prices are elevated, the regional order is destabilized, and Iran's position has actually strengthened because Iran has demonstrated that it can absorb American military pressure and continue to function. This is the deeper strategic reality that Trump cannot acknowledge. By going to war with Iran, he has inadvertently strengthened Iran's position in the region. Iran has proven it can survive American military strikes. Iran has proven it can maintain its alliance network despite American pressure. And Iran has proven that it can force America to the negotiating table. Meanwhile, America's Gulf allies are becoming less reliable. Saudi Arabia is hedging. Qatar is hedging. Pakistan is hedging. They are all looking at the trajectory of American power and asking themselves, is this a partner we want to be locked into for the next decade? The answer increasingly is no. So here is what I want you to understand. Trump is not close to a deal. The statements about being 95% done are fantasy. The real issues, the Strait of Hormuz, nuclear enrichment, the Abraham Accords, face-to-face trust building, none of these have been resolved. And the military escalation that is happening right now is a sign that the negotiating process is breaking down, not that it is reaching a conclusion. I'm Professor Jiang. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never mistake a temporary ceasefire for actual peace.